I probably enjoyed playing Mr. Bean the most because he's a character who's furthest away from my own character. As a person, I don't like him at all. I think he's very odd and pretty weird and not very nice.
For decades, the world believed Mr. Bean was simply a comic genius, making millions laugh with rubber-faced expressions and childish disasters. But what if the truth was far darker? What if the man behind the silence was suffering every time audiences applauded? At 71, Rowan Atkinson has finally opened the door to a secret fans have whispered about for years. Mr. Bean was never just a character. It was a shield, a hiding place for a painfully shy man who struggled to speak as himself. The laughter was real, but so was the loneliness, the exhaustion, and the feeling that he never truly belonged. Mr. Bean finally confirms the truth. On January 1st, 1990, television audiences were introduced to a strange, awkward man in a tweed jacket who would soon become one of the most recognizable comedy characters in history. The first episode of Mr. Bean attracted more than 13 million viewers in the United Kingdom, an astonishing number for a brand new comedy series. What most viewers did not realize was that Rowan Atkinson had been developing the character since his university days at Oxford, quietly shaping the mannerisms, expressions, and silent comic style that would later captivate the world. Mr. Bean was unlike almost every television comedian who came before him. He was not witty in the traditional sense. He did not deliver clever punchlines or long comedic monologues. In fact, he spoke very little at all. His comedy came from visual confusion, childish selfishness, elaborate physical disasters, and the universal human experience of embarrassment. Because dialogue was kept to a minimum, the character could be understood almost anywhere on Earth without translation. That simplicity became his greatest strength. The series exploded into a global phenomenon, eventually reaching audiences in 245 countries. Episodes attracted enormous ratings, and the character became instantly recognizable across cultures and languages. In 1997, the film Bean earned more than $250 million worldwide, proving that Rowan Atkinson's nearly silent creation had become an international superstar. Mr. Bean was no longer just a British sitcom character, he was a worldwide cultural icon. From the outside, it appeared to be the perfect success story, but behind the laughter was a very different reality. In later years, Rowan Atkinson admitted that playing Mr. Bean was emotionally exhausting. For decades, fans had noticed something unusual. During interviews, Rowan often seemed far more serious, reserved, and intellectual than the childish fool he portrayed on screen. He sometimes appeared uncomfortable discussing Mr. Bean and repeatedly hinted that he wanted to step away from the role. The clearest insight came during later interviews, including a widely discussed 2018 appearance on The Graham Norton Show. Rowan confessed that performing Mr. Bean required an extraordinary level of physical and emotional effort. Because the character relied almost entirely on facial expressions and body language, every raised eyebrow, every twitch, every awkward movement had to carry the weight that dialogue would normally carry in a conventional comedy. Nothing could be done casually. Each scene demanded complete control of his body, his timing, and his energy. After long days of filming, he often felt utterly drained. The performance that looked effortless on screen was, in reality, intensely demanding. This confirmed what many fans had suspected for years. The man behind the world's happiest fool was not necessarily enjoying the experience as much as the audience imagined. Even more revealing was Rowan's admission that he frequently felt he was not good enough. Despite worldwide fame, billions of views, and countless awards, he carried a persistent sense of self-doubt. The character that made him immortal also trapped him. Everywhere he went, people expected Mr. Bean, the rubber face, the childish grin, the silent chaos. Yet Rowan Atkinson himself was intelligent, private, technically minded, politically outspoken, and often uncomfortable with celebrity culture. The ultimate irony is heartbreaking. The stuttering boy who discovered freedom through performance eventually created a character so successful that it threatened to consume his own identity. That is the truth Rowan Atkinson has gradually revealed in his later years. Mr. Bean was never just a comedy act. It was both his greatest liberation and, in many ways, his greatest prison. At 71, the mask finally comes off. As Rowan Atkinson entered his late 60s and early 70s, the contradictions that had always existed in his life became impossible to ignore. To the public, he remained the beloved Mr. Bean, a nearly silent clown whose awkward disasters had entertained generations. Yet the man behind the character was far more complicated than the world imagined. His personal life became a favorite subject for tabloids after the collapse of his long marriage to Sunetra Sastry. Their relationship had lasted for more than 2 decades, and many fans had viewed them as one of Britain's most stable celebrity couples. When Rowan later began a relationship with actress Louise Ford, who was significantly younger than him, headlines exploded with accusations and speculation. The story was treated as scandalous entertainment, but people who knew Rowan suggested that he had struggled for years with the gap between his private self and the public image attached to Mr. Bean. There were also moments that revealed an entirely different side of him. In 2001, while flying over Kenya with his family, the pilot reportedly fainted during the flight. Rowan, despite having no formal flight training, calmly took hold of the controls and kept the aircraft stable until the pilot recovered and safely landed in Nairobi. It was a striking display of composure from a man famous for portraying panic, confusion, and incompetence on screen. Another surprising moment came in 2012 when Rowan delivered a speech in Parliament defending freedom of speech. He argued that society should tolerate ideas that some people find offensive rather than silence them through excessive restrictions. Many viewers were startled to discover that the actor behind Mr. Bean possessed such strong intellectual and political convictions. He was not simply a comic performer, he was thoughtful, articulate, and willing to enter controversial debates. Controversy followed again in 2023 when he criticized the environmental claims surrounding electric vehicles. Scientists, commentators, and environmental activists attacked his position, especially because of his well-known passion for high-performance sports cars. Whether people agreed with him or not, the episode reinforced the same pattern. Rowan Atkinson was far more complex than the silent fool audiences thought they knew. In 2022, he returned to physical comedy with Man vs. Bee. The series reminded viewers that his gift for slapstick remained extraordinary, but it also revealed the physical toll such performances now took on his aging body. The falls, facial contortions, and carefully choreographed chaos demanded far more effort than audiences could see. By the time Rowan reached 70, in January 2025, tributes poured in from around the world. Fans shared favorite clips, memorable scenes, and stories of how Mr. Bean had made them laugh during difficult moments in their lives. Meanwhile, the official Mr. Bean YouTube channel continued attracting tens of millions of subscribers and billions of views, proving that the character's popularity had become almost independent of its creator. Then, an old fan theory was finally confirmed in the animated series. Mr. Bean was actually an alien. For years, viewers had joked about the opening sequence, showing Bean descending from the sky in a beam of light, and Rowan himself had teased the idea decades earlier. When the animated series made it official, fans celebrated the confirmation. But perhaps the deeper confirmation was not about Mr. Bean being an alien at all. It was about Rowan Atkinson finally acknowledging that he had often felt somewhat alien himself. Different, socially awkward, and more comfortable hiding behind characters than presenting his true self to the world. Looking back across his life, the pattern is unmistakable. A boy, mocked for the way he spoke. A student who transformed only when performing. A comedian rejected for being too unusual. And a global icon who secretly found his most famous character exhausting. The real revelation is not simply that Mr. Bean was tiring to play. It is that the laughter came from a place of genuine vulnerability. Rowan Atkinson's greatest creation was born from the pain of not always being able to speak freely as himself. And perhaps that is why Mr. Bean feels so universal. Behind the absurdity, audiences were connecting with something deeply human. The fear of embarrassment, the desire to hide our flaws, and the hope that we can still make others smile despite them. The boy who couldn't speak. Long before the world knew him as Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson was just a shy little boy growing up in County Durham. Born on January 6, 1955, he came from a disciplined farming family where hard work mattered more than attention or applause. His childhood should have been ordinary, but one cruel problem changed everything. Around the age of 5, Rowan developed a severe stutter. At first, it was just a speech difficulty. Soon, it became a source of humiliation. School was brutal. Classmates mocked him relentlessly, imitating the way he spoke and treating him as though he were strange or broken. The teasing became so harsh that some children even called him an alien. Imagine carrying that kind of embarrassment every single day. Teachers remembered him as intelligent but painfully withdrawn. He rarely sought attention. Speaking in class became an ordeal. Every sentence was a battle between the words in his mind and the sounds that refused to come out smoothly. One of the students who attended the same school was a young Tony Blair, who later recalled how cruel the bullying could be. For Rowan, the message was clear: being himself was not safe. Then something extraordinary happened. Whenever he stepped onto a stage, the stutter disappeared. The same boy who struggled to introduce himself could suddenly perform sketches, deliver jokes, and command an audience with astonishing confidence. Acting unlocked a different version of Rowan Atkinson, one untouched by the fear that haunted his everyday life. That discovery changed his life forever. Instead of seeing performance as a hobby, he began to realize it was the only place where he felt free. The stage became more than entertainment. It became therapy, protection, and survival. Ironically, the very condition that caused him so much pain also shaped the comedian he would become. Because speaking felt dangerous, Rowan developed other tools. He learned to communicate through facial expressions, body language, timing, and silence. He became intensely aware of every movement, every pause, every glance. Those skills would later make Mr. Bean universally understood in almost every country on Earth. But at the time, none of that fame existed. There was only a frightened boy discovering that audiences laughed with him, while classmates laughed at him. And perhaps that is the first clue to what fans have always suspected. Rowan Atkinson did not create Mr. Bean because silence was funny. He created him because silence was where he felt safest. The engineer who wasn't supposed to be funny. Despite the bullying, Rowan excelled academically. Science came naturally to him, and his teachers expected him to pursue a serious professional career. Comedy seemed impossible for someone so shy and socially anxious. He enrolled at Newcastle University to study electrical and electronic engineering, graduating with excellent results in 1975. Friends and professors assumed he was headed toward a stable future designing circuits, machines, or complex technical systems. In many ways, Rowan looked nothing like a future comedy legend. He wore the clothes of a diligent student, spoke little, and avoided drawing attention to himself. After Newcastle, he continued his studies at the Queen's College, Oxford, where he pursued a master's degree and even began work toward a PhD. But Oxford became the turning point. There, Rowan joined the University Drama Club and a review group called the ETC. It was in that environment that he met Richard Curtis, the writer who would later help create Blackadder and shape much of Rowan's early career. Curtis noticed something remarkable. During rehearsals, Rowan appeared quiet and unremarkable. Then he performed. Suddenly, he transformed. His sketches featured elaborate physical routines, synchronized mime, exaggerated expressions, and bizarre characters unlike anything the other students were attempting. One famous driving sketch left audiences stunned by its precision and originality. In 1976, Rowan performed with the Oxford Revue at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. For the first time, he experienced the thrill of making large audiences laugh, not despite his awkwardness, but because of the strange comic energy that emerged from it. Yet the conflict inside him remained intense. Part of him still believed engineering was the sensible path. He completed his master's degree and published his thesis in 1978. He genuinely loved technology and would later become known for his fascination with cars and engineering innovation. But the stage kept calling him back. What makes this period so revealing is that Rowan was never a natural extrovert chasing fame. He was a highly intelligent, technically minded man who discovered that performance allowed him to escape the limitations of his own voice. This is another reason the title, at 71, Mr. Bean finally confirms what we all suspected feels so fitting. Fans often sensed that the genius behind Mr. Bean was not simply clowning around. There was a deeper intelligence, a carefully constructed system of visual communication designed by someone who understood human behavior almost scientifically. Mr. Bean's silence was not accidental. It was engineered, rejected by the BBC. Success did not arrive overnight. In fact, Rowan's early television career was filled with rejection. Between 1978 and 1979, the BBC repeatedly turned him down. Executives did not understand his unusual blend of physical comedy, awkward pauses, and eccentric characters. British television at the time favored more conventional performers. Each rejection hit Rowan hard. Interviews and auditions were especially painful because his stutter often returned when he had to appear as himself. The confidence he possessed on stage seemed to vanish the moment casting directors wanted to meet Rowan Atkinson, rather than one of his characters. For a while, he seriously considered giving up acting and returning to engineering. Think about how different comedy history might have been. No Mr. Bean, no Blackadder, no iconic silent disasters that would later entertain billions of viewers. During this difficult period, Rowan worked closely with friends from Oxford, including Angus Dayton. Their radio collaborations allowed him to develop characters without the pressure of television cameras. Dayton often played the calm, sensible, straight man, while Rowan unleashed increasingly bizarre comic personalities. Then came the Edinburgh Fringe Festival again in 1979. This time, Rowan's show was even stranger. Inspired by silent film legends such as Buster Keaton, much of the performance relied on physical movement rather than dialogue. Some audience members walked out, confused by what they were seeing. Others recognized genius. Producers began to notice that this awkward young performer possessed extraordinary control over his face and body. He could communicate panic, arrogance, confusion, and desperation without speaking a single word. That same year, he appeared in a television pilot called Canned Laughter. It featured an early version of the character who would eventually evolve into Mr. Bean. The pilot was not picked up, but it revealed the direction Rowan's comedy was heading. He was slowly discovering a crucial truth. He did not need to conquer his stutter completely. He needed characters that allowed him to bypass it. This realization may be the strongest evidence for what audiences have long suspected. The silence of Mr. Bean was born from necessity as much as creativity. By hiding behind a nearly wordless character, Rowan could perform without confronting the anxiety that accompanied his natural speaking voice. Then, in 1980, everything changed. The BBC finally gave him a chance with Not the 9 O'Clock News. At first, the show seemed doomed. Its launch was delayed, ratings were poor, and critics attacked it viciously. One reviewer reportedly called it the worst half hour of television ever broadcast. But the BBC controller believed in the cast and ordered another series. That decision changed Rowan Atkinson's life forever. Blackadder and the Burden of Genius. Not the 9 O'Clock News eventually became a sensation, and one sketch in particular made Rowan unforgettable: Gerald the Gorilla. Wearing a gorilla suit, he delivered an absurdly furious monologue that became iconic across Britain. For the first time, he experienced national fame. But fame did not erase his insecurities. Behind the scenes, the pressure was enormous. The cast worked relentlessly, rewriting material, filming under tight budgets, and coping with constant production stress. Rowan's perfectionism became increasingly apparent. He obsessed over timing, delivery, and the smallest details of performance. When Not the 9 O'Clock News ended in 1982, the cast chose to walk away despite its success. They were exhausted. Rowan's next major project was The Blackadder, created with Richard Curtis. The first series, set in a bizarre version of medieval England, was expensive and difficult to produce. Weather problems, budget overruns, and lukewarm reviews nearly killed the show. Then came the reinvention. Blackadder II in 1986 transformed the series into something brilliant. With Ben Elton joining the writing team, the humor became sharper, faster, and more sophisticated. Rowan's Edmund Blackadder evolved into a master of sarcasm, frustration, and cunning wit. What is fascinating is how different Blackadder was from Mr. Bean. Blackadder spoke constantly. He delivered elaborate insults, clever observations, and razor-sharp dialogue. Watching Rowan perform those speeches, it was easy to forget that the actor had once struggled so severely with speaking. Yet the anxiety never fully disappeared. Friends and colleagues often described him as intensely focused and surprisingly reserved away from the camera. Performing remained easier than simply being Rowan Atkinson in ordinary social situations. The final series, Blackadder Goes Forth, became one of the greatest British sitcoms ever made. Set during World War I, it combined comedy with a heartbreaking portrayal of the futility of war. The final scene, in which the characters advance into no man's land, remains one of television's most emotional endings. Rowan later said this was one of the least stressful productions of his career because the cast shared an unusual level of trust and chemistry. Working alongside Hugh Laurie, Stephen Fry, and Tony Robinson felt collaborative rather than isolating. That detail matters. When Rowan was surrounded by fellow performers he trusted, the burden became lighter. When he carried a project alone, the emotional cost became much heavier. and soon he would create a character that would place that burden almost entirely on his own shoulders. Mr. Bean. Rowan Atkinson spent more than 3 decades making the world laugh, but his later reflections reveal a much more complicated truth. Behind the awkward silence of Mr. Bean was a man battling insecurity, exhaustion, and the lingering scars of a childhood speech disorder. At 71, he has finally shown that the character was never just slapstick comedy. It was a mask that protected him while also trapping him in the image the world demanded. If this story changed the way you see Mr. Bean and Rowan Atkinson, like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more fascinating untold stories behind the world's biggest icons.